Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So it's been a little bit busy for the month of February, and I no longer have the RX1R in hand that my wonderful wife got me to play with for a birthday gift from renting it from Lens Rental. But I did want to go back and give my opinion, kind of my thoughts on the camera after a week use, being a Fuji shooter, being a street shooter, EDC camera shooter, photographer in general, just to give you my thoughts and opinions around the camera and what I felt about it. So again, I do apologize. I don't have the camera in hand to actually kind of point things out, but I'll do my best and letting you guys know my feedback. So first things first, let's start off with the quality of the camera. Now, with the initial video I released, I thought the quality of the camera was fantastic, especially for something that's 10 years old. Even the version I got from Lens Rental, which was well used, we'll say, was still in a really great shape. There was a nice patina happening around the pop-up viewfinder and things like that. But that metal body mostly and the size of that camera and so forth, with the weight of the lens on it, it felt nice. The build quality was nice. The lens operated nicely. The focus ring operated very nicely. I was really impressed that, Sony had something out there that I wasn't aware of that was primarily metal construction. And it to have fared so nicely over 10 years that even the version I had looked almost, I would say a 9 plus if I was to rate it on, say, B&H or KH scale. I think it's B&H that use the numbers. I was really impressed with it, as far as the flip out screen and everything that was on it, everything worked flawlessly. Buttons felt great, tactile. No issue with pressing the shutter button. I love the fact that I can put a soft shutter release on it to give me more of a tactile feel on the camera and so forth. So when it came to the body and the quality of the body and the build, I would definitely give it, at this point, and being a 10-year-old camera, it gets a 9 and 9.5 for sure. But so let's go from that into what I thought about the handling, ergonomics of it. It's a small camera, as you guys saw from my nice little introductory into the Just Saying series that I want to provide for you guys. And even the brief initial conversation I had about it on the outing I did in downtown Plymouth during the ICE Festival. You're going to need help holding that camera. Now, when it came out, it had a grip that it came out with, and it also had an actual external viewfinder that Sony made for it as well to help with that piece if you didn't like the pop-up one. But ergonomically, with the big lens on it and a very, very small body, you're definitely going to need some type of grip. And I think the Peak Design L bracket or Peak Design, I forget what it's called. I'll put it in the comments somewhere. The bracket that I had on it with the little material that came around to the top, D-ring, allowing for me to put my two fingers in and hold that camera, was perfect. Didn't really see the need for a grip. Didn't really see the need for extra purchase with the fingers on the front of the body because of the Peak Design attachment that I was using. It really worked well. I would give the ergonomics of it, I would give it like a 6, only because the body was so small and the lens was so big on it that you need something to help you hold the camera more efficiently with one hand and be able to press the shutter, especially if you're set up for, like I was, a point and shoot scenario where I had it on auto ISO, I had it on aperture priority, and I had my aperture set to a specific one. So I was able to just point, and shoot, point and shoot, and it was great. Now, when it comes to the functionality of the camera and menus and things like that, I kind of said that on another video, the podcast I had. Because this camera is 10 years old, it was very easy to set it up. For a person who don't shoot Sony, I'm not familiar with Sony menus. My wife shoots Sony. She would have blew through the menus with no problem. But I actually got through the menus fairly quickly. I don't think it took me 30 minutes to have that camera set up the way I wanted it to shoot, aperture priority, and then literally be shooting. And I think that's because it's a 10-year-old camera. It didn't have all of the new options and things that you have in the newer cameras to have to go through. The setup of going from a camera related stuff to video related stuff was a little off, but that's Sony. Um, and other brands have issues too. I'm not gonna not say that Fuji doesn't, but it was very easy to get through the menu for me, having not shot a Sony on a regular basis and deal with those menus. I was able to get through it pretty fast. So no big concerns there. I did like the customization of the camera with the buttons. I was able to change customization out on a few buttons to give it more of a style of shooting that I wanted to handle, whether I wanted to deal with focus squares or things like that. It was nice to be able to set up some customization on some of the buttons. Again, guys, I was really impressed with the age of this camera and what it is able to do as for a 10-year-old camera and keep up with cameras today or blow out cameras today. The biggest thing, of course, is EDC. EDC of this camera is fantastic because it's so small and the lens, although big and is a really big focal point for this camera, and the quality at which it produces, 42 megapixels is the version I had. It was easy to put this camera in a pocket. It was easy to carry this camera around everywhere. It actually motivated me more to pick it up and carry it around everywhere because the body was so small and I was able to walk out of there and I had a camera that was literally providing me 42 megapixels of resolution on every shot. Now, when it came to those images themselves, I don't have any presets for Sony on my Capture One. I don't have any presets for Sony on Lightroom Classic that I use. So I was able to really kind of hone in on the JPEG versus RAW. Now they have the JPEGs and I didn't really alter them up and you see them now coming across the screen. I actually preferred unaltered, very little editing whatsoever, the JPEGs over the RAW. They were more contrasty than the RAW was, which is expected because the RAW is just giving you all the information and you can do what you want later. And the RAW files are phenomenal in that, and that I can crop in and everything and so forth if I needed to. So having this 35 mil, I believe, equivalent or 35 mil lens focal length was not a big issue because I had so much detail in the 42 megapixel image that I was able to crop in. But I do say when it came to JPEG versus RAW, until I was able to really kind of set up what I want as presets on my editing software, I actually preferred the RAW or the JPEGs, I should say. Excuse me. I like the contrastiness of them, and I like what I saw in them because it was kind of what I saw when I took the image, if you know what I mean. So when I got back and put them in my editing software, the JPEGs were more true to life on what I saw versus the RAW. I would have to do a little work to get the RAW to what the JPEGs look like, but I was able to do that. If I didn't want to edit anything, I can honestly say I was pretty pleased with the JPEGs. Definitely would do some presets for sure to just slather them across all the images as they import in and be ready to go. But if it was something that I wanted to just be able to do that, no problem. Now, when it comes to use of editing images or taking images from the camera to say my smartphone and bringing them up on social media quickly, did not get a chance to play with that. I don't have the Sony app or whatever it is that Sony calls it, and I don't have the Sony account to pull things in to play with that stuff, so I can't really comment on that. So we're going to move past that. And then we're going to get to the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like about the camera from my initial week's use of it. And we'll conclude with what I think Sony really should be doing, right? With this camera that I think a lot of people are saying. So let's start with things I didn't like. I honestly say that I don't know if I like the pop-up viewfinder or not. It was convenient, but I don't know if it was needed on this camera. I found that I was able to see what I wanted to see with the LCD screen and capture the image and capture it in the framing that I wanted very easily with this camera. So I really can't say that I was a big fan of it. I would have liked to have tried the, what do you call it? The external viewfinder, which put it more center to the camera instead of to the left of it, giving me kind of a rangefinder feel, even though this isn't a rangefinder style camera. And I would have wanted to see what that was like, but I can't say that I really cared for the pop-up viewfinder. The other thing, it was awkward at first with this camera and the lens and trying to figure out how I want to do it, because this, unlike or just like, and I got the Q3 right here with me, but this is a much sizable camera. The lens really made it interesting to maneuver with the camera when I wasn't using it, not wanting to bang it up, not wanting to bump it, not wanting to do anything. I'm excited that yes, it is internal focus, which of course makes sense with a camera like this, but I wasn't excited that it was so front heavy that it made me always think about where I place the camera, kind of like with the Q series cameras, and I can't really say with the X100 because the lens is more, to me, that camera's ergos is more designed to where it'll stand up more. I don't have the same concern as that I'm gonna bump the lens or that the lens is sticking out so far that I have to be careful. Where with this camera and the Q series cameras, I definitely see that there. So, but I don't see how you get around that. That's how the camera's designed. That lens does what it needs to do, giving you the image quality you want. So it's something you got to deal with, right? Just like the pop-up viewfinder. The other things that got me is again just me being a non-Sony shooter. Some of the buttons and the dials I could care for or not. I can't say I was ever a big fan of the spinning dial on the back of the camera. When I had Panasonic, when I was trying it out, when I first started in photography along with Nikon, I didn't really care for that. I cared more for the toggle. So the spinning dial, could have taken that or left that. Now, as far as anything else, that's it. And those aren't really big issues, except for maybe the viewfinder. But what I liked about the camera was, one, being 10 years old, the image quality was still top notch out of this camera. The build quality I already talked about. I love the flipped up screen. I actually didn't realize the screen flipped up in the back and can give me a low angle of view or top angle of view on it, and that was a nice surprise, and it was fantastic. The LCD image quality, even for a 10-year-old camera, was fantastic, to where again I didn't care to use it pop-up LCD. So those are the things I really liked about it. So what's my conclusion when it comes to this camera? Well, I have said in my initial review, I've said in the most recent review I did of how I think Leica took a lot of its Q feature set, I believe, from this Sony camera. They probably won't ever admit that though, but I would love to see Sony continue with this line. I think a Mark III should be done. I hope so, because at this point you can't get a brand new camera that's still in stock at B&H and Adorama anymore. They've cleared out their old stock. The only way you're getting this camera is getting it used now. And I don't know if that was just all of a sudden an indicator that something's coming down the pipe. There's been a lot of YouTube buzz over this camera, and obviously I'm joining that bandwagon right now. And it is such a unique setup, and the size of the body versus the lens, that, and looking at the success again of the Q and the X100, I think they would do phenomenal with this, and folks will be happy, especially on the Sony side, with having this pocketable camera. Price ain't gonna be exciting, because at the time this was discontinued on B&H, brand new, it was still going for its original price, which I think is just crazy. But I can honestly say I was excited enough that I had went to B&H's site to look at getting a used version that was in the best rating they had, and I was too late. Somebody snapped it up, and then all of a sudden the next day, bam, all the new ones were gone as well. So again, I don't know if that's an indication something's on its way, but I like this camera enough to where I would have gotten a used copy in good condition. Almost would have thought about getting one of their new old stock ones at its original price still. With that though, you guys let me know what you think. Do you think Sony is about to release an RX1R Mark III? With what I've seen happen on Adorama and B&H recently with their new stock that all of a sudden has just disappeared out of their inventory. Do you want to see one just because of what the camera is capable to do? And if you do, what do you think the price would be if they came out with a new one? I'm thinking, based on the Q series and things like that, Sony's current pricing might be around the same place. I'm thinking at the most $3,500. At least that's what I think it should be. So I'll see you guys on the next video. Enjoy and get out and shoot.